Hey, you geeks! Amazon has come bearing gifts! Shall we call Jeff Bezos the Lord of Gifts? That's a nice title. He's given us a shiny new Lord of the Rings show, now named The Rings of Power. He's also announced the first season will release on September 2nd, 2022, and run for 8 episodes. The show promises a tale of the Rings of Power. As the official press release said, this is a title we imagined could live on the spine of a book next to J.R.R. Tolkien's other classics. Until now, audiences have only seen on screen the story of the One Ring, but before there was one, there were many. At first, I was skeptical that Tolkien would approve of such a title. Then I opened my handy-dandy Silmarillion and found the final chapter entitled The Rings of Power and the Third Age.
And I've never been so happy to be proven wrong.
It now seems appropriate to use that title to talk about the Second Age, as this final chapter in the Silmarillion talks about the Second Age. I think the show should be judged primarily against this chapter as canon, with the understanding that this chapter is a condensed history and not a novel. So of course, there will be adaptational liberties.
It's the Bible, you get credit for trying.
I don't know if I need to give a spoiler warning for deep lore, but I will give a pronunciation warning. I'll do my best to follow the Don's instructions, and if I get it wrong, I'm sure you'll let me know down in the comments. Now, let's talk about the Rings of Power.
3 rings for the Elven Kings.
The 3 refer to Narnia, Nenya, and Vilya. They were named the Rings of Fire, of Water, and of Air. And of all the Elven rings, Sauron most desired to possess them. However, the elves made many more than just the 19 rings of power mentioned in the poem. Most were forged at Eregion by Sauron and Celebrimbor, son of Curufin the Crafty, who was a son of Fëanor. Fëanor is personally responsible for driving the elves out of paradise in the First Age and dying trying to kill Morgoth.
I'll go ahead even higher and into the fire we go.
Curufin, then, was one of the sons that took the oath to avenge his father, reclaim the Silmarillions, and basically wage a war of wrath on all the free peoples of Middle-earth for an entire age until the gods intervened. Oh! Curufin was also known for trying to kidnap Luthien from Beren in the First Age, but that didn't end well for him either. Celebrimbor, at the time, repudiated his father's attempt to take Luthien, so as far as Fëanor's line goes, he's rather decent. But he did literally work with Sauron to make the Rings of Power. Thus, the Amazon show is probably going to show elves making poor choices. Poorer choices than merely disdaining the dwarves as they do in the Jackson films.
Who is this? Your brother?
That is my wife.
Hopefully with better dialogue. The lesser elven rings seem to have been around for most of the Second Age until Sauron forged the One Ring and tried to control them. Even the proud Noldor refused Sauron's control and noped it out of Eregion when Sauron came a-conquering. The elves were not deceived and fled from him, and 3 of their rings they saved and bore them away and hid them. The 3, we know, ended up in the hands of the wise, Gil-galad, Círdan, and Galadriel, who, wisely, had earlier rebuffed Sauron's advances and stayed in Lindon doing majestic elf things. Hence why the show had the new young Galadriel recite the poem for the title reveal.
7 for the Dwarf Lords.
Tolkien did not write much about dwarves in this period, though I anticipate we shall see many in the show, especially with its focus on the forging of the Elven Rings, which we know happened in Eregion. Eregion was nigh to the great mansions of the dwarves that were named Khazad-dûn, but by the elves had Hanvarond, and afterwards Moria. Although Tolkien specifies that only the elves forged the Rings of Power, the dwarves are just next door, so the show may fudge that a bit. Narratively, it would be good to give Sauron a connection he can exploit to conquer the dwarven race when he can't take the elves. A dwarf lord who can summon his kin to receive the 7 rings, which did not end well for them. The dwarves used their rings only for the getting of wealth, but wrath and an overmastering greed of gold were kindled in their hearts, of which evil enough after came to the prophet of Sauron. The dragons devoured them, and of the 7 rings, some were consumed in fire, and some Sauron recovered. With the dwarves, the show has a great opportunity to show indirect causes of evil, the harm of one group seeking their own pleasure beyond all reason, thus attracting dragons. Something I'm sure we can all relate to in one way or another. But more importantly,
we have dragons.
There be dragons running free in Middle-earth during this time. The show had better show them, along with men, causing much evil in Sauron's name.
9 for mortal men.
Many Tolkien nerds have been super excited about the water coming in the title reveal when they speak of men, since the most well-known men of this age are the Númenóreans, men who dwelt out on an island within sight of the Undying Lands. Lots of cool and terrifying things happen there, yet the Silmarillion doesn't mention Númenóreans taking rings of power. Sauron gathered into his hands all the remaining rings of power. To men he gave 9, for men proved in this matter, as in others, the readiest to do his will. Those who used the 9 rings became mighty in their day, kings, sorcerers, and warriors of old. They obtained glory and great wealth, yet it turned to their undoing. The greatest among the 9 was
the one they say no living man can kill. The Witch King of Angmar.
Now, Angmar did not come about until the Third Age, but it's possible that the man who became the Witch King hailed from the north, and he could argue that he was taking Arnor back from the Númenóreans for Sauron in the name of reclaiming his home. We've seen Saruman use such tactics.
Take back the lands they stole from you. Burn every village!
Though we also know Sauron has a close affiliation with the south. He used Haradrim to fight Gondor. In Sauron's recruitment of men, we can see them trying to use the rings for good, but Sauron ensnaring them in the end. Now, could have some of those other men been of Númenor? Of course. They were a multinational maritime empire at the time.
I am the monarch of the sea, the ruler of the Queen's Navy.
And some of those lords would have been predisposed to seeking great power at whatever cost. Tolkien makes it clear that many Númenóreans used their advanced technology to subjugate nations of other men. So brace yourselves to see Númenóreans acting badly, and for their vassal states to be comparatively virtuous because it's canon. It's also canon that Sauron takes advantage of Númenórean pride, which leads to their downfall. Only the few good Númenóreans were spared, one family, from whom Aragorn is descended, and even they famously screwed up.
The same blood flows in my veins. Same weakness.
We are guaranteed to see Númenor in the show, and I believe we've already seen it in the photo revealed last year. Some hypothesized that this tree in the background was Telperion, a tree from the Undying Lands killed by Melkor in the First Age. But I think it's Nimloth the Fair, the tree given to Númenor by the Valar for their service in the Great War of Wrath. The tree is eventually cut down by Sauron, and its only saplings survived to be planted in Gondor.
Yes, the white tree of Gondor, the tree of the king.
Showing in how small the tree has shrunk is a great way to show how far the race of man has fallen. But if we've learned anything from Tolkien, is that greatness is not a measure of power, nor influence. Rather, it is the least among us who are sometimes able to do the greatest deeds. That is what the show must get right for me to be satisfied. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you would like to see more. Your patronage is greatly appreciated.